Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Talk with Coach, the podcast where we deep dive into the realms of sales, leadership, and personal growth. I'm your host, Becca Goldsberry, an elite sales and leadership coach, proudly representing Southwestern Consulting. I am thrilled to embark on another insightful journey with you, whether you're a seasoned professional aiming to sharpen your skills or an aspiring leader hungry for knowledge. This podcast is your compass to success. Join me as we explore the strategies, tactics, mindset shifts necessary to thrive in a competitive landscape of sales and leadership. Get ready to unlock your potential, seize opportunities, and conquer challenges like never before. Let's embark on this transformative voyage together. Welcome to Talk with Coach. So, my guest for this episode, I have known since we were very young. Little kids, and I am excited that she has agreed to join us. So my guest today is a lifelong resident of Seymour, Indiana, grew up on a family grain and dairy farm. In doing that, it instilled in her a strong work ethic and a deep connection to her community. She holds a degree in quantitative analysis from Franklin College, which she obtained in 2009, following the birth of her daughter, Haley. In 2016, she embarked on a journey to further her education and career by successfully passing the CPA exam in 2019. By 2021, she became part owner of a local CPA firm in Seymour, Indiana, the Mark Dennis & Co. CPA, Inc. DBA is Dennis and Blish CPA Group. So in 2024, she assumed sole ownership of the firm, which operates under the name Dennis and Blish CPA Inc. She is very involved in the community, including congregation member and stewardship board chair of Redeemer Lutheran Church, Jackson County Young Professionals, and the Jackson County Impact Group. Outside of her professional endeavors, she loves spending time with her husband, Clint, who I have known all of his life, and there are pictures of that, me holding him when he was just a baby, and their daughter, Haley. And she also enjoys staying active through exercise, indulging in a round of golf, immersing herself in a really good book, and baking delicious treats. And she is a phenomenal baker. Let me just tell you all that. So welcome to the podcast, Rachel Blish. Thank you for hopping on today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Now, you guys, Rachel and I, she is one of the ones that we get together, and we haven't been so great here this year because we've all been busy, but we normally get together once a quarter, and she's part of a mastermind group that we all love just to get together and just pick each other's brains and think through things and how to grow business and help each other connect with amazing people as well. And so I've really appreciated, you, Rachel, just, being part of that, and just love getting to know you as a business owner now too.
Yeah, I really do appreciate hearing all of the different insights and perspectives from everybody in that group. It's a wonderful group to be a part of.
It is. So, which reminds me, we probably need to get another date here in the books too. Let's dig in, because I know there are so many people that I've been talking to lately that have had questions about taxes and accounting and setting up their business and all of this fun stuff. But I would love for you, and I know I just read your bio, but give me like a quick 2-4 minute story of how you decided to go into accounting and kind of like your journey.
Oh, that's a great one. So my journey was not linear, let's put it that way. I will say that I've always loved accounting. I've always loved numbers, loved math. I've seen my mother, take on an entire business running for somebody else. And so in senior year of high school, I started working for Mark Dennis, and as an intern, and I worked throughout college. And the funny thing was, I was probably an overachiever at times, that I wanted, extra credit hours my freshman year in college. And so I enrolled in a accounting class that the professor blatantly told me I was not supposed to be in his class because only sophomores were supposed to be in his class and that I shouldn't be there. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stay in your class because I can, and I'm not going to become an accounting major because you are the one running this program. So, hence why I got a quantitative analysis degree. It was still very much business minded, but with math background, so it could lead me wherever I wanted to. And then, of course, God led me right back to where I'm supposed to be. So he led me back to Mark Dennis in 2016, and I started working here part time. And it was not until I was coming home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night and realizing that I was happy, and my husband was pointing that out to me and saying, Rachel, you're working two different jobs and you're coming home late and you're happy because you're doing what you love. Like, why aren't you doing this? And I'm like, okay, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So that's the moment that I said I'm going to put myself back through college when I had a 6-month old, and did that for 2 years and then studied for a full year, taking all 4 CPA exams and passed them the first try. And here we are. My goal was to own the practice someday, and we've made that.
Yes, you have. That, and we've been talking about that for, quite a few years too. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you guys.
Yeah.
So what has been the biggest challenge or obstacle that you have faced in growing your business?
Oh, I would think out of all of the things that you come across, it's those perspectives of other people. It's
Mhm.
one, making sure that you're living up to the standards of your parents and living up to the standards of society and those around you. But also in the same manner, I've always had a very high um, need to succeed, but also it's being able to put my spin or my fingerprint on it versus always just following what everybody else wants. And so that's probably the hardest thing to do without feeling like you're letting someone down.
Mm. And you do have a beautiful little daughter too. How is a working mom growing a business, now owning the business? Have there been challenges, as a working parent?
Of course. I mean, we have that discussion all the time. Thankfully, Hallie is pretty good on routine, so I can pretty much guarantee she's going to be in bed by 9 o'clock. So if I need to go back to work, I can do that or work from home. But yeah, as the parent, I mean, I started this because of her. Like, I wanted to go down this journey because of her. I wanted to spend more time with her. I wanted to be able to afford a lifestyle that if I wanted to go and travel for 2 weeks, I could work wherever I was. And so that's the good and the bad, right? So you have to put a lot of time and effort into it to get it to where you need it to be. And so you're sacrificing time of family and Hallie time, but in the end, it's going to be so worth it. And it already is showing that it's worth it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, what is the best business advice that somebody has ever given you?
Oh, let's see. I think the best advice was really to not focus on what others are doing and focus more on improving yourself. So sometimes you can get distracted by, other firms or other individuals or other people's goals, but really that's not your goal. That's not your path. So always staying on your path and knowing what your focus is the best thing.
I was going to say, a friend of mine, Carla, and I, we always talk about is just staying in my lane. Don't worry
Hmm.
about what everybody else is doing. Just stay in your lane and your goals and just stay focused on that.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just get sucked into everything else, right?
So true. So true. And it just bogs down your mind. So you can't accomplish what you need to.
I love that. So, when somebody asks you, especially now as the business owner, what is one tip to help me grow my business, Rachel? What do you tell them?
Yeah, so most business owners go into business automatically thinking, "Oh, I can do something. I know how to build something. I know how to create something. All of the things," which is wonderful and great. We all need those. But the biggest thing that people need to realize is they need to understand accounting. Even if they aren't the one that does the accounting in their business, they need to understand it and need to know their numbers. Because if they're not sure where their money is going, then they have no control over how their business is going to grow. So making a budget and focusing where that money is going for a good reason is very necessary.
Okay, so let's dive in on this. What is, if somebody's like, okay, I don't have QuickBooks, I don't have anything along those lines. What do you tell people? Like, how is there a tool? Like, how should people start budgeting, right? And
Yeah.
kind of walk people through some ideas on to be able to create like a better budget.
Yeah. So I always start with somebody who has no real numbers in hand. I always say, go out and act like you're about to do this. And start getting insurance quotes, start getting the realization of how much things cost, how much is the markup supposed to be, because every industry is different.
Yep.
So understanding what is the minimum, so what is your absolute cut and dry budget of a minimum, and then we go to the opposite spectrum and say, okay, if if the sky's the limit, where's my budget? Does it land at I want to hit an X amount of number, I want to hit so many sales? Everyone's driven by different things. So if I told if I told five people the same thing, it wouldn't make it. They all think differently. So I normally sit down, have that conversation, understand that person first and foremost to say, what's going to motivate you? What's going to drive you? Is it the recognition because you have a storefront? Is it the recognition of the amount of sales? Is it the net income or gross profit that you're going to be making? Because everything is going to be different. Some people just say, oh, I've got a storefront, I made it. I'm like, but that's not really it. So you really got to know those numbers.
I love that. So, what is the easiest way, especially just say you've got a realtor or somebody who's a 1099 and they don't necessarily have the overhead of like an office,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's the best way for them to kind of budget or think through where are they spending their money too? Because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah. So if someone was very small and just starting off or a 1099 on the side, first and foremost, I would say have a separate bank account. Always have a separate bank account for your business because in the end, you could always just pull that one statement for the entire year and be able to combine all of your numbers. Then you don't have to worry about sorting through all of your personal stuff. And the other piece of advice, never run personal stuff through the business account. That if you need personal funds, take draws. Always feel welcome to do so, but never run a bunch of meals and personal entertainment and other things like that. That is not true to the business.
Got it. Okay.
So, but Excel. Excel is a great tool for somebody who wants to keep their overhead low.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely make sure that you are utilizing the same categories all the time so that you can understand and plug in those numbers as you go along and have an up-to-date amount of what you're spending, whether it be on a weekly basis, monthly basis. I mean, daily would be perfect, but
Right.
if you did it weekly to monthly, that'd be great.
Got it. Okay, cool. So let's talk about and this is something coaching so many clients too. I don't think nobody really has a great grasp of the difference between an S-Corp, a C-Corp, an LLC, a 1099, the benefits, right? Like there's a cloud of mystery around all of this. And I know people have, you know, done things wrong because they were given misinformation. So, Rachel, I would love for you just to kind of share with us a little bit about which each one is, and then who would be a good business or the right type of person, maybe for each one of those. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
So let's break it down to the W-2 versus 1099.
Okay.
A W-2 is somebody who's going to be told when to work, where to work, how long, all of the things. A 1099 is when you say, here's your assignment, go do it. When do I do it? I don't know. I don't care. How do you do it? I don't know. I don't care. You do your way. Okay, so you're going to get a 1099. As a 1099, the huge benefit to that is you get to write off all of your expenses that you incur, whether that's rent, your phone, your utilities. Now, we have to be careful on that, and there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the tax code. If it's a home office,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
different rules and regulations. We won't get into that today.
Right.
But as a 1099, you get to then take advantage of the tax code and write those off. Now, some people say, well, do I just do it under my personal name or do I form a business name? With this, the state sees an LLC, which is a limited liability company, and it is a pretty much a bubble of protection. Okay? If you set an LLC to the federal government, they're like, so what? They don't see an LLC. Only the state side sees an LLC. So if you form an LLC as a single member, the IRS automatically treats it as a disregarded entity, which says now you can put it on your 1040 on your individual tax return under a Schedule C. If you are a multi-member LLC, the IRS automatically treats it as a partnership, which is a 1065 form. It's a separate tax return, which then creates K1s and goes into your 1040. So that's not to say that's the only two options, though, of those LLCs. You can actually ask it to be classified as an S-Corp on the federal level. So if you decided, I am running a small business and I have more than myself and more than just my brain power making the money, then you could say, I'm going to be treated as an S-Corp. I'm going to file a Form 2553 and I'm going to ask to be elected to be an S-Corp, okay? So
Yep.
it's not just a, I want to be, so I am. The federal government actually has to approve you to be an S-Corp. So then that's a separate tax filing, which is a 1120S, which then creates K1s that goes into your 1040. So it's what's called a pass-through entity. So the S-Corp return is all information. It passes through to your 1040. What's the benefit of having an S-Corp versus a Schedule C?
Right.
A Schedule C, you pay self-employment tax on the bottom dollar, every bit of that bottom dollar. As an S-Corp, you don't. As an S-Corp, you are deemed as the owner that needs to be paid a reasonable salary. So maybe you're making 150 grand in the business, but you're only really pulling in 50,000 as your W-2, right? So
Yep.
you're only paying self-employment tax on that 50,000 and saving yourself the self-employment taxes on the other $100,000. So there's a big tax savings there.
Yeah. Is there a difference, Rachel, between the S-Corp and like a 1099?
So a 1099 is a form of how you get paid. So it's reporting from one entity to a person or another entity of what they've paid you. So let's say I pay a cleaning company for my office, and I pay them $5,000 for the year. Okay? I have to, as a business owner, report their income to them on a 1099. If I pay anybody over $600, they have to receive a 1099 from me. So then they take that 1099 and what they do with it is their choice. So whether they report it on a Schedule C, like I mentioned, whether it's on a partnership return or an S-Corp, they have to then take advice from counsel and from CPAs to say, hey, what's best for your business?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So there's lots of convoluted pieces to the puzzle here.
So if you're, because I know I've got a lot of realtors, a lot of mortgage, a lot of commission-based people that listen to this podcast, and they're, of course, 1099 through their company. Would you recommend them to become a S-Corp or just stay as a 1099 and they can,
So you have
expenses? What do you think?
Yeah, so you have to be careful. So there are some rules and regulations of when you can and cannot become an S-Corp.
Okay.
So one example would be a straight consultant. So think about, how does a consultant make their money? Is
Mm,
it based upon themselves and only their brain? Yes, pretty much that's normally the case for a consultant. They would then say every bit of their earnings is subject to self-employment tax because it's all dependent upon them in making that money. Now, if you're a realtor, you're not making money just because you're standing there giving advice.
right.
You are now selling something. You are now bringing in other people to the transaction and making things happen. So you as a realtor could easily create an S-Corp. So you need to create with the Secretary of State your entity and then create with the IRS and form that S-Corp.
Got it. Okay. Good info. Are there things that you have seen, your time in the industry where people may have made mistakes that are preventative that you always share with people like, hey, I highly recommend you do these things, right? Budget is one. What are some other things that people, whether they own their own business, they're doing their own taxes, what are some of the things, the pitfalls that you are kind of like, hey, wait, maybe rethink about doing this?
Sure. So I always find in the very beginning stages of startup, most people will come to us after the fact and then we clean up messes. So the
Mm,
biggest thing I would tell someone who's, thinking about creating an entity and forming an S corp or forming an LLC, have legal counsel or a CPA on your side helping you with this. Because so many times we could help prevent you from paying unnecessary fees and or setting it up improperly if you just talk with somebody. So we're here to help. And two, there's a lot of misconception on, I'll just form this S corp to avoid self-employment taxes all the time. Well, actually not. You have to create payroll taxes, payroll tax accounts, because you're going to have to give yourself a W-2 at the end of the year. So it's not as simple as just filing a separate return. So there's more steps to the background that most people want to ignore. And so you got to be a little careful with that.
good advice. Any other big advice that you see, or any other big changes happening because every year it seems like there's something new in the tax code. Any big things in 2024 or coming down the pipe for 2025 that people might need to be aware of?
Yeah, so we're going to be keeping our eyes on how these Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when it expires. So when Donald Trump was in office, he actually put this into play where there is what's called a phantom deduction. And it's a QBI deduction, so qualified business income deduction. And so if you are a taxpayer that has a business and is profitable, you're seeing this phantom 20% deduction on your tax return right now. And that's going to go away if they don't make another resolution to keep this going forward. And so we've got a lot of businesses that are getting huge cuts in their adjusted gross income to bring down into taxable income that are, it's going to go away very shortly, and it's going to be a big change, and most people aren't even aware they're getting it. And so if you're unaware of how your taxes work, you need to start learning. You need to be aware of those lines because it's gonna be a rude awakening.
So if they don't, you know, pass this again, right? What do people need to start doing now just to be prepared?
I mean, that's where we always utilize the tax system to our advantage, right? So it's not ever doing anything incorrectly, it's learning the tax code and
Mm,
playing the tax code to your advantage. So if you are well aware of this reduction in this phantom deduction here, and you know you need new equipment, maybe you push that new equipment purchase off until 2026 or 2025. So when you think about this, I don't know if anybody who's listening does tax planning, but tax planning is the most necessary thing to do with your taxes. And it helps to then kind of paint a picture of where your taxes are going to land at the moment when we look at them versus saying, you know what, it's not past time yet. I can still make a change. Maybe I need to put into my retirement. Maybe I need to save for my kids' college. Maybe I need to buy some more equipment or spend some money in a more profitable manner so that I can reduce my taxes and also grow my business. So, tax planning is the top of mind in my industry. And so, we've already got some clients right now that have already started setting up their first tax planning appointment. And that is going to start happening in July, August, September,
Oh,
where the majority do tax planning in November and December because they only think, I've got to think about something really quickly right before the end of the year.
I don't know how many. I mean, I am sure 75% of all people and business owners do oh, it's November. We should probably start looking at things for the end of the year, not proactively
Yep.
planning in advance.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many don't even understand the subject tax planning. If
Mm,
I state it out loud, most people say, "What's that?" So I would highly recommend if you're one of those business owners that say, "What's tax planning?" You should look into it. We should talk.
well, I was going to say we'll leave Rachel's contact info here on the bottom. But is there a good resource that you would recommend if somebody would say, "Okay, I want to learn a little more about this"?
Hmm.
Is there a good resource for that?
I mean, other than reading a ton of tax code,
Mm,
no. I mean, we are constantly learning and constantly going to conferences and listening to webinars. And so, as much as people want to get their advice from barber shops and, your next door neighbor, and you have to be aware of what industry you're in. And so, as much as anybody could, build a deck on their home, it doesn't mean everyone should build a deck on their home, right?
yep.
So, you gotta have to think about that.
So everybody, find a CPA, an accountant, and go talk to them if you're not tax planning correctly. So
Hmm.
go ask questions, sit down, and really talk with somebody, a good CPA who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. And if your advisor or your CPA gets weirded out by the discussion of tax planning, you probably should look around.
Good advice. Great advice. And you guys, CPAs, should be working with everybody's financial advisors as well. Am I correct?
Absolutely. We love utilizing those Zoom meetings to grab those advisors, talk with them, and have the client in the room so they can work together. We work with bankers, attorneys, investment advisors. If someone is a little antsy to have them work together, to me that's a red flag. They should want everyone to work together and be on their side so that they're just positioning themselves to be in a growth position and cover themselves in every way possible.
Mm, okay. I love that. So, for you, as you are growing your business now as well, what are some of the things that you're doing to, grow your CPA firm moving forward?
That's a great question. So, I knew about 12 months ago that it was time for a coach. Coaching is absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
So, when I paired up with a coach who is a current CPA and has owned her own firm, and now she does speaking all around the world for CPAs. And you don't want to hear the hard things but you need to hear the hard things. And that's what a coach is for. So the best part about this was I knew deep down I needed to change the way we did our billing. And she solidified that within the first hour of talking with her. So within the first 6 months of our business, we have dramatically changed the way we do billing. Before we were billing in arrears 3, 6 months behind. Now every single client has a proposal and knows what their fees are and knows the standard of our collections and knows everything about it before they ever get a service done here, which is so key. The other thing is we're putting systems and processes in with our project management systems, and I'm absolutely loving it. We're tweaking it, we're constantly improving it. So we're doing a lot of work right now. And the even more fun part is I'm taking 6 accountants down to Orlando this summer so that they can learn and grow for about 4 day conference, and they're super excited. So I think it's very necessary to keep investing in your business if you want it to keep growing, and it's only good for those around you. To be better for your clients, you have to be better. You have to make staff better, everything. So that's what we're doing.
That is awesome. How do you approach decision making and problem solving in your business?
Hmm. Lots of prayers.
Okay.
Lots and lots of prayers. Lots of questions. I always try to ask the person who it's going to most affect or most involve in the change and try to get their feedback, because the last thing you want to do is make a change internally and say, hey, staff, we're going to do all of this different. And they say, what? Why?
Mm.
And instead of ever jumping to that, it's including them in the discussion, including them in the realization of why it's necessary, including them in the feedback and giving that and saying, what do you want to see differently? How do you want this to work out? Because otherwise, the end result could be drastically different.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure you've had thought, well, okay, we need to do something this way, but then when you're getting feedback from your team, you're hearing something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So when that happens as a business owner, how do you, I don't want to say negotiate, but how do you find a common ground
Yeah.
for that?
So I always try to go back to the why instead of the this is how it's always been. Well, why do we want to do it that way? And what does it improve, or why is it so helpful to do it this way? Um, and normally, as we talk out the whys, it becomes apparent very quickly of which way we need to go. Or other people bring up different topics. They said, oh, I didn't even think about that. That makes more sense. A great example was when we were changing where all of our documents are being stored. And I remember having a very vivid conversation with staff after a month of using the new system. And I said, okay, today's the day. We can go back to the old or we can stay with the new. And I said, I'm not leaving this room without some discussion. We need discussion about this. And somebody finally spoke up and said, why are we doing it? And what I didn't realize was I may have said my why without really saying, here is my why. And so we broke it down even deeper. And after we discussed the whys, they all understood so much better and appreciated it.
Yeah.
And
Okay. There you go.
do you want me to go back?
Yeah, go back just a little bit. So after they found out your why, sorry everybody, microphone went dead for a minute. So after they find their, heard the why, they completely understood it. Is the last part. Yeah.
Yeah, so after we explained the why of why we were changing all of our document management and broke down the steps in detail, and then staff realized, okay, maybe Rachel does have a good reason for changing all of this, and we're on the same page here.
Okay. I love it. So, and I love how you are so good at bringing in the team nowadays into the business and really valuing their questioning, their thoughts, their opinions, because you guys are really transforming the way that you guys do business there.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. I
Mhm.
think it speaks volumes to the staff to know that their voice is heard, and I want them to be empowered to know that they can ask questions, to know that they are on the same level. So if somebody else asks the question, they're as competent to answer it as I am.
I love that. So, Rachel, how do you stay motivated like during the tough times? Because there are, let's face it, October through April are crazy months because I ever hardly ever hear from you because you're like in it to win it. Like you guys are so busy. How do you stay motivated in those tough times? Especially, and I love Clint, and he is so phenomenal that I'm sure he's like a big source of help too in those
He,
times.
he is. He is tremendous. He is the best supporter I have ever had. He goes with the flow, thankfully. But we might be two ships passing in the night on, 10 months out of the year, but we still love each other dearly. And um, I don't know, that motivation comes from a multitude of sources. I mean, the biggest thing, and I have said this from day one since Hallie was born, because I want to make sure she's well aware of this. But, I truly feel we're on this earth to do God's will, and I feel like He's put me where He wants me, and so I want to glorify Him in all that I do. And so to slack or not give full effort would not be glorifying Him. And so, I always wake up, say my prayers, read my devotion, get going in the morning because, without Him, we wouldn't be here. And so, yeah, so I feel like that's just one piece, but that's such a big piece.
Absolutely. All right. So, what is your favorite leadership business book, growth mindset book? You know what? Because I one of your favorites is one of my favorites.
Okay, so I've got so many because my books that I read, if somebody tells me they're reading like a romantic comedy or a sci-fi or whatever, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like if I get a book in my hand, it's all about growth. It's all about learning something different. It's learning new ways of doing things. So, Atomic Habits is a great book. Again, it's habits, right? So it's making sure that you're staying the course. Um, I'm currently reading multiple books, but I currently just finished Systemology,
Okay.
and that was a very intriguing book. And it was one of those books that you listen to or read, and you're like, yeah, yeah, that's what I've been telling myself. That's what I keep saying to my staff. Like, that's exactly why I'm listening to this. So sometimes you never realize why you like stumble upon a book, and then
Right.
you start listening or reading it, and you're like, it's just the clarification I needed to hear here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and on our way home from St. Louis yesterday, we were actually listening to Lead for God's Sake, which is such a great book. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
No, I have not.
So that one is, I had never heard of it until a familiar name that we both know, Ashley Shaw,
Yes.
mentioned it. And I highly recommend, if no one has read that, go out and read it or listen to it. Um, it makes your perspective a
Mm,
little different. And I appreciate those perspective shifting books.
I do too. They're
Yeah.
my favorite because they're the ones I'll go back to over and over again. And
Yes.
read. Like there's several by John Maxwell that I'll go
Yes.
back to every couple of years and just reread
Absolutely.
just for that point. The 21 irrefutable laws of leadership.
Yes.
Every couple of years, always go back to
It's
that.
it's a great one. I actually stumbled upon his rule of five the other day.
That's a great one.
And yeah. And it's so truthful when you talk about, you know, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. but you do have time. I mean, you could do something a short time every single day, and you don't realize how big of change that's going to make in the long run.
Hmm. No, I love that. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the future of your industry, and how do you guys plan to adapt and stay relevant?
Okay, so there's so many changes in this industry. First, I would say technology is the biggest change. It's constantly evolving. And I love the people that say, oh, AI is going to take away our job, or, this software is going to do our job. Well, to a point, maybe, but you also have to realize that the computer is only as smart as its creator or as its um, person who's using it. So who's told it its rules. And without those rules and the knowledge of how things work, it's not going to be very powerful. So, some people say we don't need to keep learning the basics. Oh, absolutely. Wrong. You have to keep learning the basics because otherwise the person utilizing that software is never going to know why the software is doing what it's doing.
Mm,
And so I think the technology is only going to weed out people who don't want to learn and force others to learn more. It's going to be constantly pushing the person to the higher level to learn more, do more, grow more,
right.
which to me, it's necessary.
I love it. So, thinking about as you guys grow the business in Seymour, and with all these changes and just knowing what to do, is there one thing that you're really super hyper focused on to continue that growth?
Hmm. Our our hyper focused point at the moment is probably making sure our systems are top notch.
Okay.
Um, Systems and also making sure it's constant learning.
I love it.
So if we're not constantly improving, we're going to be dying.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you work a ton in building the business, and let's just face it, there's not a lot of time during tax season. But what are some of the things that you guys love to do as a family, or for you just to go relax?
Sure. We love to go travel. We love to get outside. Oh, we love to go to a good place to eat for sure.
Hmm.
I would say we travel to places that are good sights and good food. Um, and then if I could actually like be by myself, I love to do a good baking day.
Okay, what's your favorite? What's your favorite to bake?
Oh man. I love baking pies.
Okay.
And I'm more of a cream pie type of person, but I could make any kind of pie. Um, and I always love a good soup, but those normally take a long time to make,
Yeah.
especially if it's a very full flavored soup.
Okay, what's your favorite meal?
Ooh, homemade chicken pot pie.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, favorite restaurant?
Oh man. Um, I would say I don't know that I have a favorite restaurant. I would
Oh.
say I really don't. I am more of a person that would love a very good flavor profile. So if I just have a normal plain Jane anything, I don't really care for that. Like I would like to have the other day we went to Brew Burger and I had a salmon sandwich that was delicious with some lovely aioli on it. That
Okay.
was gorgeous.
Oh, I do like a good brew burger once in a while too. Yeah, I'll have to try their salmon. I have not tried that salmon sandwich.
It's delicious.
But okay, I'll take it as a recommendation. Okay, last question, and I always love ending on this question. What is the funniest story you can share with us about you growing up? What you got?
Oh, man, funniest. I mean, I've got some bad stories, but this is probably the funniest. Looking back and now realizing that I have a child close to this age at this moment,
Yeah.
let me just say I was a very determined young child. And so when I got in trouble and, you know, I don't know if you were, but I was spanked as a child, but
I was too.
that's just something that happened in my household. I
Mm-hmm.
probably appreciate it more now these days and understand why. But we lived in the country, and I, for some reason, decided to go out on the front porch and sit outside and scream bloody murder for no good reason other than to just be mad at the world. And God love the neighbor, 2 miles down the road that called and said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And my dad's like, "Yep, she's fine. She just got in trouble." I'm like,
That's
what was
awesome.
that gonna do? But whatever.
We all can be a little dramatic. Let's just face it.
Yep, it
Yeah.
happens.
I love it. So, Rachel, thank you so much for hopping on today's podcast. You guys, this wraps up another empowering episode with Talk with Coach. I hope you found today's insights valuable and actionable. Remember, growth is a journey and every step forward counts. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and on Spotify. And don't forget to like as well. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, or topics by reaching out to us on social media or through our website. Until next time, keep striving for greatness, keep pushing your limits, and remember, your success story is waiting to be written. This is Becca Goldsberry signing off. Take care and make it a blessed day.